So I'm kind of like Ricky Bobby right now because I don't really know what to do with my hands because your boy's a little bit incompetent and forgot to charge the receiver for the mic. So hopefully the audio is pretty good. If not, I guess I'll fix it in post. We are here back in 1996 for my first trip to Laguna Seca. It's appropriate, right? I mean, all anyone talks about is the pass with Alex Zanardi on Brian Herta in 1996. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. The only thing we seem to be talking about this weekend, on a weekend in which that we have 5 drivers mathematically eligible for the championship, is a Herta and being involved in some sort of a dilemma. And that dilemma is whether or not he is going to have a super license for next year's Formula One season. He's got an offer from AlphaTauri, which could potentially, of course, end up with him in a Red Bull seat in the next couple of years should he take that. But the thing that's standing in his way is that he currently has 32 super license points and doesn't quite have a path to get to that final 8 yet. That being said, I have to tell you that the fact that we have this fantastic championship battle, and yet what we're talking about this weekend is not the championship, it's not the race, and it's not even IndyCar. We are talking about the value of IndyCar compared to not only Formula 2, but also to Formula 3, which I just thought was just dumb. I think this whole thing is dumb, this super license thing. And I have to say that my sentiments are kind of shared by many of the drivers. Today, or this morning, I guess I should say, maybe the afternoon if we're talking about California versus Indiana, but I spoke to a whole bunch of drivers at the bullpen here at Laguna Seca, and the first question I asked almost all of them was, do you feel that the current super license standard is fair to IndyCar? And I got to tell you, these are some of the most candid answers I've ever heard from IndyCar drivers talking about anything. And it really says something when these guys feel this passionately to talk about this so candidly. So, without any further ado, I'm going to stop yakking, listen to some IndyCar drivers talk about how they feel about their championship. I hate that I have to ask this first because you are going for a championship, and yet it seems like all we're talking about is Formula 2 and Formula 3. What's your evaluation of IndyCar's standing internationally when we're talking about the consideration for a super license?
I think it's massively undervalued, like IndyCar is. I think the fact that we are sort of put mainly between F2 and F3, I think is a bit of a joke, because IndyCar is the highest racing series outside of Formula One in the world. There's no question about that. So, in my personal opinion, if you're a top 10 driver in IndyCar and win races in IndyCar, there should be no doubt that you should be able to go to Formula One. That's my take on it. With that said, though, I respect that we have rules and that people want to follow the rules. I think, that's important, but I think the rules are just wrong. That's my point, like the system is just wrong, and we need to change the system because IndyCar is such a competitive series. The drivers we have there, the depth of the talent is incredible, and a guy like Colton Herta, which is already a race winner, been finishing up front in the championship a few times already in his young career. There's no doubt he has everything he needs to be a Formula One driver.
It's more valuable than winning an F2 championship. You're competing against tougher people that have been in the series much longer, and teams that have been, doing it much longer. So it's way tougher than F2.
Why do you think it's undervalued internationally? I mean, why do you think the FIA values it so low? Is it just because of their feeder series?
Yeah, I think FIA, backs their feeder series, and they don't want to give IndyCar, I don't know whether they don't want to give it the credit, but it kind of appears to be that. They have their system, and they created it, so they're going to make sure that their system is valued higher for super license points and that sort of thing. But ultimately, IndyCar is a very, very high level series. You have drivers that have been in the series for 20 years. Guys like Scott Dixon. I've been in it 17. So it'd be very tough to argue that a second-year F2 driver would be better than a 17-year veteran of a series with the same car, same tire, same combination. So, I think it should be ranked higher.
there's a lot that I can say on this. Yeah, you put it very bluntly, which is correct in a certain way. But yes, no, IndyCar is highly competitive. I mean, you can argue that you've got probably some of the quickest guys in the world. Obviously Lewis and Max are very, very, very strong, but you can't say that Scott Dixon, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, to name a few, are not slow drivers. Well, so yeah, I would say that it, in a certain way, should be valued more. But I think this is more of a fluidity thing, right? Would you argue that where we are now as an IndyCar series is more competitive than, say, in 2016, 2017? Probably, right? Not to say that it wasn't competitive. You've got a lot of the same guys at the top, but the spread of talent throughout the way, like, okay, take, for example, Helio, he's P18 in the championship. This guy is very, very fast. He's won, obviously, four Indy 500s. I remember watching the videos back in the day with Penske. Well, Jesus, this guy was very, very quick. So it's not like you haven't got talent all the way through. Okay, I'm P20, so I've got to put myself in there. So the top 20, top 21 is incredibly talented, and Formula 2 has some very, very competitive guys, but it's a smaller spread. You can get all the way to F2 with just paying and just doing the years. That is a way that quite a few guys get there, and it's on the world stage in a certain way. Whereas here, yes, you can pay, but that doesn't last long. You're very quickly recycled, and with the way that motorsport is moving, more and more people want to come here. The competition is getting harder and harder and harder. I know people from Europe, there's up and coming talent from Lights which have got to come in, and it's now a balance because most teams have the money to pay a driver. Some teams want the money from a driver. You've got drivers that can bring both talent and money. It's super competitive. So to answer your original statement or question, yes, I think in a world stage it should be viewed slightly higher. Not to say that maybe the original application of numbers was correct or not. Maybe now it should be revisited as through the spread, or even considering that for me it doesn't even matter really about the numbers. If a team in F1 wants a driver above every other driver, there is a reason they want that driver, right? Whether it's money, if it's money, they need the money. It sounds stupid, but sometimes they need that to survive. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's because they want the talent, and if you're already picked up on that, that's more than I got to achieve because I wasn't in the short list of drivers, and I have a super license. I think that's a fundamental telltale of what a good driver is. So I think that it should be a bit more seen past of what the super license is.
Yeah.
But it's not to say in a certain way rules are rules. I don't think sometimes they're right, especially if it's a bit outdated. But IndyCar is super competitive. Plus, you've got the ovals, which someone like me isn't used to. So that I'm always going to be on the back foot a bit for a couple of years on those. And you've also got the teams. It is a development series. Whether or not it's only the dampers, does make a difference. And so being with the right team at the right time makes a massive difference.
Well, there's obviously a lot of politics involved in certain licensing systems. Maybe we should create a license system that dictates that people have to go through Indy Lights. Maybe that would be more fair. But there's no doubt in my mind this is the most competitive and I think high-end open wheel level in the world as far as a driver's championship is concerned. So, as far as the credibility of the series, I don't think you'll find a more competitive and demanding series than IndyCar. So, I'd put money on any of the top IndyCar drivers going anywhere in the world and representing very, very well.
It's so ridiculous. If you're thinking about FIA qualifying IndyCar at the same level as a Formula 3, it's a joke. I have to say it's a joke. But hopefully they will looking into it. I feel that IndyCar, not only because of the horsepower, the competition level, the tracks that we go, and you can see Formula 1 drivers coming over here, they are having the same hard time as everyone else. So it is a series that we should be comparable to obviously Formula One, GP2, and the high-level series that in Europe are recognized.
Do you think IndyCar's underrated internationally?
Oh, no doubt. I think we definitely don't get the credit that we deserve from worldwide, but that's okay. I mean, like, it's, I think the biggest thing is we're not FIA, we're not, I raced in a FIA championship in supercars, and I've got a super license and Colton Herta doesn't, which is crazy when I'm a touring car racer. So, it is what it is. I think it does get recognition, but it doesn't get recognition in the important areas if you want to go to Formula One. But I definitely don't think we're a feeder category to Formula One. I think we're definitely our own spot, and I think a lot of the Formula One fans probably need to get a grip and realize that we're not a feeder category.
I think some could argue that Formula One is a feeder category to this, because I'm pretty sure our Indy 500 champion's a Formula One guy, and we could have a champion of the series to be a Formula One guy. I mean, what is said internationally about IndyCar? I mean, you would know, being a New Zealander who raced a lot in Australia. I mean, how do you see, like, the racing fan outside of Formula One view IndyCar?
Oh no, I think there's a lot of fans out there that appreciate both, and I think that's what we've got to, we've got to drop all this BS. We've got to just enjoy both series for what they are, and they're completely different. You've got massive manufacturer support and their constructors. They have to build their own race car. Well, this is a bit more of a spec series, and I guess that's why it's so competitive. But be excited that you've got two international renowned racing series with plenty of good drivers. That's what frustrates me the most about all this stuff, is like just the motorsport fan always trying to make a negative out of either one. And I think we should just be positive that we've got two thriving racing series with some great drivers, some great tracks. Just be excited for that. But I think worldwide, IndyCar's got a lot of recognition. And I think you're slowly starting to see that with Herta and many other people. And people coming back over to IndyCar, there's a lot of kids out there that actually dreaming to be in IndyCar or Formula One. But that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But let's just be happy that we've got two great series and enjoy it.
No, not at all. I think it's ridiculous that the FIA super license system grants this, similar levels of accreditation or whatever you want to call it for, third and fourth place finish in American F3 or whatever the FIA league is, or the Aussie Winter Series and all that, to competing in IndyCar. It's insane, really.
Well, I mean, IndyCar isn't a feeder series in general, so we are a top-level championship. The disrespect when it comes to a point system. First of all, why are we in a point system anyway? You know what I mean? Like, it should just be like, oh yeah, like if you are the youngest winner in IndyCar history, we're talking about someone specific here. Yeah, no, you're good. Like, it's fine. You know what I mean? Not like if he got a couple trophies in New Zealand F3 at one point, yeah, he can qualify to be an F1. It's like, that is insane. So the whole system to me is just mind-blowing. And it shouldn't be a question. Like, again, they brought in that point system because you got a couple drivers in F1 that were like, all right, well, we should probably have a point system. But this is not the same issue. So again, it's not the same rule book. I feel like that you have to stick to. Again, everyone loves to stick to rule books, but I don't know.
Well, that's what I kind of worry about looking at it. Is it almost seems like IndyCar drivers are being defined by a series that doesn't sanction IndyCar races. Do you kind of get that sense too? And do you think it's valid in any way?
I think the opinion that is held of IndyCar, through the FIA, is definitely not accurate. That's not where it needs to be. Mainly because it's not like we have a bunch of people who haven't had super licenses over here competing. You know what I mean? So I drove a Formula One car. I didn't have a super license, but you're pretty close to doing that back when I was over there. So it's one of those things that it didn't matter 10 years ago, and now it does. But why? You know what I mean? It was actually Formula One's issue because they couldn't get any drivers in their seats because the teams were not able to raise enough sponsorship to pay the drivers that they wanted. So now they can, and now they're like, well, now we have a system again. So it's a little bit odd. They had a point system because people were paying for rides, but now all these teams really they have enough money to raise money to put the people that they want in, which is amazing. That's what you want in motorsport.
And so naturally, like the gigantic hypocrite that I am, let's continue to talk a little bit about this Colton Herta F1 thing. Now, unfortunately, Colton didn't actually make it over to my side of the bullpen, which is fine. I mean, obviously, he's a guy who's very, very busy right now, and a lot of people want a piece of him. But I did manage to find him in the paddock, had a quick conversation with him, a couple minutes, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, I asked every question that I think you probably want to ask in that situation, but, you know, I have to be careful about what I say because, you know, there were a lot of things that were said that I might be able to tell you guys about in, you know, 6 months, but at this time, what I can tell you is that Colton Herta, I think, has a really good shot at getting to Formula One. I think it's totally dependent on the super license, and I'll say this, that if Colton does get the super license, he'll go, but every time I insinuated that him going to Formula One was a done deal, to him, he was very quick to say, look, I haven't made a decision yet, I haven't made a decision yet, I haven't made a decision yet. And, you know, and then he even said, because he thought I thought he was lying to me, he said, no, really, I have not made a decision yet. You know, I'm not lying to you. And, you know, I obviously believed him, and I still do. I think that there's a chance that maybe going to Formula One this early isn't the best for Colton Herta. I think that, frankly, there are options that are available to him that he doesn't have to rush if he wants to get there. He's got 1 year left on his Andretti Autosport contract. We know that. My thought process is, even if he doesn't get the super license this year, he can do FP1s through the end of the year, and as far as I know, there's nothing stopping AlphaTauri or Red Bull from taking him on as a test driver and continuing to work to get Colton Herta the necessary super license points. And I think if he has a good championship year, his final potential year for Andretti Autosport and IndyCar, at least for a little while, next year, I don't see any reason why Colton Herta can't be in F1 by 2024. I don't think it's a make or break sort of deal. I think, however, you know, if Helmut Marko is calling you, you need to pick up the phone and you need to take that very seriously, which clearly Brian and Colton Herta are taking as seriously as they possibly can. More power to them. Absolutely you should, because I've said this before, I even said it to him. He's one bad Sergio Perez season at that AlphaTauri away from the best car in Formula One. And I think if you're a young driver who wants to make a mark in this sport, particularly Formula One, you can't look at that and say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to stay in IndyCar. I think you have to at least consider it. So what actually happened today in IndyCar? Let's take a look at the top 5 from today, and it was Joseph Newgarden, one of the championship contenders, up top. Colton Herta, no surprise, in second. Romain Grosjean in third. Alexander Rossi, great day for Andretti Autosport. And Callum Ilott, who of course you guys heard earlier in this video, had a great start in 5th position. And of course that number 5 means so much this weekend. 5 drivers who have a mathematical shot at the championship. Really, it's about 3 if you're thinking about Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, and Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon, of course, is the closer. You think about him as the driver who snuck up and beat Juan Pablo Montoya to the championship in 2015. There's no reason to suggest that he couldn't do that here. Joseph Newgarden, obviously, based on that top 5, is one of the fastest cars in drivers in the facility. But Will Power has been so consistent this year, he needs to finish outside of the top 3 to even give any championship rival a shred of hope. If I was calling it right now, I think it's going to be Will Power, but we'll have to see. We'll take a closer look at the championship tomorrow as we look at the starting grid and talk about looking forward to the race on Sunday. So, an eventful, spicy video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, hopefully with a working mic.